I want to bring in MSNBC contributor and retired ATF special agent in charge, Jim Kavanagh. Jim, it's great to see you. What's your reaction to this first?
Well, Jose, it's a horrible decision. It's nonsensical. It's sad that the Supreme Court would rule this way. A bump stock clearly turns a semi-automatic rifle into a submachine gun. The cyclic rate of fire is similar to that of a submachine gun. The trigger is pulled once, and the explosive action of the cartridges keeps firing the weapon. And that's what the 1934 Congress tried to define. If you see that shooter there, his trigger's held. He's not moving his trigger finger. His trigger finger is held still. The explosion sends the gun back against his shoulder. In a traditionally manufactured submachine gun, only the slide goes back, which is the top of the gun. And so basically, this was a too clever by half way to get around the law. And the ATF director interpreted it appropriately, said it is a submachine gun. And the Supreme Court just, lost their common sense. I mean, we're a nation based on common law, but apparently not common sense. And, it's akin to a boater hanging 4 tires off the side of his boat, and when the Coast Guard stops him saying, well, this is a car, so you have no authority over me. I mean, it's really a sad time for a court to make that kind of ruling. And the argument
Jim,
that I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just wondering about that because you are absolutely correct. And the fact is that what is it that a machine gun means, right? And so if you pull that trigger once and for whatever reason, regardless of the technology used behind it, the weapon continues to fire, that is, in and of itself, what a machine gun is. Where am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right. And look, in 1934, the National Firearms Act was a result of the gangsterism of the 30s. In 1933, 4 law enforcement officers were killed at the Kansas City train station, the Kansas City Union train station, when Pretty Boy Floyd, with a submachine gun, tried to break out, Frank Nash, who was being transported to the federal prison at Leavenworth. They tried to break him out, and they killed 4 law enforcement officers. 2 Kansas City officers, a chief of police from Oklahoma, and an FBI agent were killed by submachine guns. And that was the last in a string of those. And Congress said, hey, no more of these gangsters-type weapons. No more submachine guns that aren't controlled and regulated. So now we're going to control and regulate them. And, of course, the forerunner of the ATF was just then the Bureau of Prohibition. We all know the history of Eliot Ness. And so they were given the responsibilities to enforce those laws. And, that's been the way America's been for years. And then there was a ban on civilian ownership in 1986 for machine guns not already possessed. So this is a too clever way by half. That video you just showed on the feed is the tell-all right there that the Supreme Court is wrong. Look at that shooter. I can tell you that his finger is not manually going back and forth. Yeah,
that's really the key.
That's the key.
Let's look at that. I don't know if we have. Let's go to that video because I think it's important that we do that.
Watch that video.
It's the single pull of the trigger. Look at the finger.
Look, he's not moving his trigger finger. He's just, and I'm not talking about not that one, but the one where the gun is actually firing, because the other one there's no explosion, so you can't see it clearly. But when he's firing the gun, it's the explosion of the cartridge. That's it right there. Just run that. The explosion of that cartridge is what makes the gun go back and fire again. So we can argue how they interpret it, but here's the bottom line. They're dead wrong, and they're dead wrong for America. I would just say this quickly, Jose, this argument that the ATF director can't interpret the law. Look, I was a law enforcement officer for 36 years. You interpret the law every day, all day. When you make a traffic stop, you interpret the law. Was the guy careless driving? Was he reckless driving? You have to interpret the law. Every lawyer interprets the law all day. Every judge does as well. So if you say a state trooper can't interpret the law and decide whether he was careless driving, he's got to call in and get a judge to decide that. But you can't have a country like that. And the ATF, this is the only item that they decide on. I mean, they get shipped all kinds of, I don't know the numbers, but scores and hundreds of gun add-on devices and all kinds of things that they technically have to look at and rule on and say that is not a firearm, that is a firearm, that's not a machine gun, that's not a silencer, it is a silencer. I mean, I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do. Are they now going to be the ATF? Because the country can't work that way. It's silly, that argument that the administrative law enforcement officer can't make the ruling. At every level of law enforcement officers make rulings. They have to.